old bandmates. I know that we're not around anymore and it's been a while, but we're really excited that this record, which is Upside Down, has been re-released by Dead Broke Records. About 500 of you guys ordered this record, and that's fucking awesome. So thank you so much for doing that, and thank you to Mike Bruno for putting it out for us. There are 6 bonus tracks on the streaming version of it, which are alternate versions that we recorded at the Magic Shop of As Long as She Doesn't Smoke, Hell or High Water, which is not on the original record, and The Hat Stays On, and If I Knew Numbers. And then there's a original version of Water versus the Anchor that we recorded in Philadelphia at Creep Records, and a demo version of Allusion to Italy. And the remaster and the remix is awesome, and I'm really, really happy and excited. Thanks for watching and spending your Saturday night with us, guys. Really appreciate it. It's been a very bittersweet week for all of us. I'm working on a documentary about the band, and we're about halfway there with the GoFundMe. And our first music video ever was premiered on Brooklyn Vegan for Hell or High Water, and it came out really good. So thanks so much for checking that out. And if you haven't seen it, the link is in my bio.
Holy shit.
Nicole,
it worked.
What's up?
What's up?
Let the record be known that I got Nicole's number 10 minutes ago, or whatever, 10 minutes before I went on, and asked her to do this. So thank you for responding and doing this.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. How's it going?
It's going all right.
Nice. I guess we'll jump right into it since we're in the middle of the episode. Yeah.
Sorry, Tommy.
By the way, do you remember us meeting at all back in the day?
Yeah, I remember a meeting at that. I think that show where you were in the crush list. I think that was such a weird time in the band. Like what Tommy was saying. I think that the big thing that I remember with that is just that I really wanted to be a professional musician, and I really wanted us to be, not in in a shitty way, but just I wanted that to be our job. And so I was being a big dickhead about us behaving professionally, and Jason was very just raw expression. And we were a shit show. We were a shit show. And every time we would behave like ourselves, I would get frustrated that we weren't being professional. And I feel like at that time when you joined the band was the height of that, where I was being just a real asshole about us not being carrying ourselves in a professional way or whatever that dumb shit is. It's very funny now, but when I think back on it, I definitely, we all had our idiosyncrasies, but I feel like I was, I don't know, I look at myself as the villain of that time period, not in in a super horrible way, but I just wasn't the right fit. My mind was in a different place. And I didn't get where Jason was really coming from.
Right.
It just took me a long time to get it. And once I did get it, it was just okay, I was being a dumb shit. So it was, yeah. So I think when I met you, it was right in the middle of I think I even had a fight with Tommy at a show because he was late for sound check, which is if you have a fight with Tommy, you're doing something wrong.
Well, it's funny because, trust me, it was not easy ever. Not even in the later years when we reunited, it was never easy. And I, much like you, was very much wanted to do this for real. I wanted to make it my job and be professional. And Jason was extremely reluctant to do that sort of thing. I mean, we even had, I don't want anyone to think I'm trash talking Jason, especially when he's not here to defend himself. That's not all where I'm going with this. But people have to remember that at the time, nobody was famous. None of these bands that we played with were famous. That was not even a thought that maybe we wanted to, but that seemed far-fetched. You know what I mean? Even our favorite bands weren't famous. You know what I mean? Sunny Day Real Estate seemed famous, or Promise Ring to us. But Jason, I'll tell one quick story to kind of explain how hard it was at times. We played a in-store at a record store called Looney Tunes at a point when we were, I would say, at our height of our popularity, where there was like legit like a line of people where after we would play, we would sit at the table and sign autographs. And he got on stage and told everybody in the audience not to buy our record from the record store, and to wait and go outside and buy it from him at our van. And our record got banned from the record store, and then threatened to take all of the records from Revelation Records off of the shelves indefinitely. So he was a tough one, but I think he had a point to what he was trying to make. Maybe he was on like a Ian MacKaye tip. I don't know, but yes, we both experienced that in different ways.
I think he just his heart was always, I think, in the right place. He approached music with such a just like a purity of expression, and I think we all did that. It's just like, you know, when you talk about what happened after you joined the band and how you were talking with all these different labels, and you made a lot of very focused artistic decisions and not commercial decisions. I don't know, especially at that time, I don't know if I would have made the same decision. You know, I just wanted that to be my life so bad that I was losing the plot. And I think Jason really helped me balance that. I mean, after I got kicked out of the band, I didn't join any bands for several years while I was trying to get my head straight. And I think that, you know, I really credit Jason with helping me figure out where that balance is with wanting to make music a career, but, you know, keeping your feet, or keeping your head in that like pure place where you just want to create and express. And
well, you went on to do different things in music. I remember you were a writer at CMJ.
I was, yeah.
And then are you still involved with the music industry today?
A little bit. So I did, after I moved to Nashville, God, it would be like 2004. And I started doing a lot more touring and playing once I moved here. I played some with Casino, which was Nick and Tyler from North Star.
Right.
And that was like their folk rock project that I thought was really cool. I toured with them for a while. And then I started a band with Tyler and Michelle from Stray Light Run that was called
I remember that.
Yeah, that was like a folk rock kind of thing, and that was really fun. And then I ended up joining a Saddle Creek band called the Minor Birds that I played with for many years.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, and I played some with Brennan Benson from the Raconteurs. I did some touring and recording with him. But all of that stuff is way more poppy than the direction that On the Mighty Princess was going in. And that, I think, is also like the crux of why you were so much of a better fit. You know, like we had a lot of like Tommy and Jason and Lou and I had a lot of common ground. There was a lot of stuff that we really liked, but I also grew up on like Michael Jackson and Motown and stuff like that. Like I'm a pop kid in a lot of ways. And so I think that, yeah, like when Jason was really wanting to go in a really aggressive direction, like Tommy's totally right. I did buck that to some degree. And so, well, like, when you,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, when they brought you in, you were the right person to make that direction really come to life. And I loved what you guys did after I was no longer in the band. So
it's good to hear that. And like, you know, and I appreciate that. It was I was saying to Tom, man, like, I never saw a band like On the Mighty Princes in Long Island in my life. And like it you know, there was Inside, they were an emo band. And then like there was a couple other ones, like Silent Majority was a little more hardcore. So to me, I was saying earlier, like that was a style of music that I had only heard about from bands in the Midwest. And to go back to what we were saying before, you were the one that got the band on that Promise Ring show with American Football. What do you remember about that whole situation?
So that was a funny thing too. So I think that was definitely our first like really big show. We were playing a ton, and you know, people on Long Island were paying attention to what we were doing, and it really felt rewarding. but you know, we hadn't done anything that was like, you know, that was a legitimately large show.
Yeah.
And so again, going back to my like wanting to be the professional band or whatever, I think Tommy's dad was driving our gear to the city. Maybe there were two cars involved. I'm not really sure. But like they ended up showing up late, and like a bunch of my cymbal stands were missing, and so I had to like a dipshit go to the Promise Rings drummer and ask to borrow cymbal stands, and I
Oh
was
my God.
salty as fuck about it, which is and I was a total asshole. And so that part sticks in my memory. But we also like we had a bunch of new songs that we had never played live that we played for the first time at that show, which is a good memory to me because I remember how fearless we were.
Right.
You know, older touring playing shows. If you wrote something 2 days before and hadn't really rehearsed it much, like I wouldn't go play it at a show like that. But we were completely fearless. And it was just a really excellent show, especially those two bands. American football didn't tour a bunch, so it was really killer that we got to do that. And I feel like I remember there was like the Long Island Voice at that time. Do you remember that thing?
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And they did this little write-up about us that was just like about what it was like a big break for a local band or whatever. And I remember seeing that. It's just like, yeah, man, it's a big break.
Let me ask you two questions. What were some of your favorite songs from the first record, Making of a Conversation? Which, by the way, you know, I don't want to blow up anyone's spot here, and you'll be getting an email soon, but I think there's a talk of re-releasing that. So, what do you remember? What are your favorite songs from that?
You know, I think the first song that I ever played with on the Mighty Princes was Anywhere in Europe, and I think Jason gave me a little cassette demo of that. It was just, you know, the demos that Jason made, which were just him singing with a guitar, and I just absolutely loved it. The thing I loved about Jason's songwriting is that it had this this like humanity to it, but it also had, I mean, within like even when you guys got more aggressive and like intense, there was still like a hook there. There's
Right.
pop in there. It was just, you know, in his own unique way. And I think that song, more than most of the other songs, was very much that. It was like this very tender-hearted, honest pop song in his own way. And the first time we played together and played that song after listening to the demo, it just felt, you know, Tommy is an incredible bass player and Lou is an incredible guitar player. So it just like it came together amazingly, and it made me so excited about what that band was going to be. And every song we wrote was like that. I feel like it just, my expectations from like the initial ideas to what it turned out to be once you got those other brains in the mix, it was just always incredible. Like those guys are absolutely brilliant, so creative, and so are you. So
Well, I love that. Thank you. I love that record, and I can't wait to hear some kind of remaster, because I remember loving it so much, and I think that it could still resonate today, you know, with people, especially people that may not have been aware of it. So, you know, because we just re-released our second record, and that had been unavailable and not even on streaming for so long. So it's cool that people are still interested in this kind of stuff.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure people can find it somewhere online. I think Rocklock has a Bandcamp with the first record on there. What are you doing now that maybe we could share with people? And, you know, I don't know if you have like any musical projects that you want to drop, or, you know, things of that nature. Is there anything that you want to share with anybody?
I am kind of retired from music at this point. I did one Minor Birds tour last year, and that's been about it for the time being. Maybe I'll do it again. But I work at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, and I help tell the story of music. that's what I do lately.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I do come through there every now and then, so I have to hit you up when I'm back in Nashville when this nightmare is over.
Sweet. I hope you do. Thank you for letting me like pop in. It's really nice to, I don't know, share memories and talk to you and see Tommy and Lou on there.
This is it's very special. So I love that we got you on here impromptu.
That's awesome.
Cool. All right, cool. All right. I'll talk to you later. Take care.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Hey.
You're the first person that got a round of applause. I'm giving you a
Oh
round of
shit.
applause.
What's going on?
It's Lou. I love it. Nothing much, man. This is pretty cool. It's a pretty special night. um, okay, let's go. I want to talk about the part of the band where we made Where You Are and all that stuff and Sirens and the reunions. So Tommy and Nicole kind of gave the backstory, but let me just ask you really quick, and then we'll fast forward. What are your memories of your first practice with Jason, Lou? I mean, Jason, you are Lou. Jason,
hmm
Nicole, and Tommy. When you start playing with them, what are your memories of that, and what were your feelings on that?
Um, well, I mean, given that it was 20 years ago, it's a little bit fuzzy, but I believe the first practices we did were in my parents' basement, um, which is my sister actually lives in the house still now, with the old checkered floor and all that. Um, yeah, I mean, we got together and everything just flowed nice. We it was one of those things where, once we just started playing, everything just went nice. Again, it wasn't definitely didn't foreshadow what was to happen, but everything was smooth in the beginning. Let's put it that way. Um,
What did you want to start a certain type of band, or did you have like a style? Because you were playing,
uh,
the first band you were in was kind of like Helmet, is what Tommy was
right.
saying.
Yeah. Well, when me and Tom did box, I mean, we never had any idea of what we were doing. We just did it. I mean, we played what we liked to hear. And that was really how it went. Even with the first On the Mighty Princes, it was kind of like Jay had a couple of songs and we went from there. That kind of like set the tone for what we were going to do. And as we went on, we got heavier and heavier and heavier. But the initial project just sort of we actually the first few songs we wrote were pretty mild and pretty light songs, which I had no problem with. I was cool with anything. Um, and then again, like any band, it becomes a little bit more self-referential as you do it. You write a couple of songs and then you get an idea in your head of what you guys sound like. And you're like, oh, this is kind of what we sound like together. And then that kind of I don't want to say puts you in a box, but it sort of sets the tone for the other songs you're going to write, and then there's a gradual progression from there. Even lyrically and stuff. As you're in a band, you write about what you write about your experiences, and then as you are in the band longer, your experiences become you being in the band. That's your experience. So all the songs start becoming about your life with the band almost, and it's a cycle that leads to um, songs going in a certain direction. I mean, I think a lot of the later songs wound up being, at least from my lyrical input, were a lot about just like being in the band. Um, and I think a lot of bands go that route. I mean, I used to be a huge Carson fan. I mean, and if you look at that band, a lot of the songs just wound up being about like what it's like being in their band. Like
Yeah.
what it does to you mentally in your writing style, and like you feel like you have to live up to a certain image that you may or may not have even had a part in creating. Um, but yeah, and that's why music's so interesting. I mean, it really is life. It's what it represents what you do. And we were all in a place where we all came from different places. We came together, and then we all kind of went our separate ways, and then obviously we came back together a few times.
Right. You brought up a couple things that are interesting. Like I'm glad you brought up lyrics, because even though there were a few songs that Jason sang by himself, like Caboose and Illusion to
Mm-hmm.
Italy, one thing about the band that I thought was so interesting when I joined was that the three of you wrote your own lyrics, but you didn't always collaborate. I don't even think you really collaborated on lyrics at
Right.
all, if I remember.
Yeah.
So, like, there were songs that
Probably
weren't about
very,
one thing.
very little. Yeah.
Yeah, like
There
there
was
were
a very
songs.
little collaboration.
Yeah, some of the songs could have possibly had three subject matters.
Right. Hmm.
Right. So that's cool and very interesting in a way, and unique, because I never heard of that before.
Right.
Um, you were kind of a lead guitar player, even though that seems strange. Like what?
Hmm.
And you had an interesting sound, and you didn't use effects pedals.
Right.
Who were you emulating when you were playing lead guitar like that?
Well, I don't. I think the reason why people may have responded to it is because I wasn't really emulating anyone. I was just playing, how I play. I mean, obviously, I draw influences from all over the map. But again, like I would never make a concerted effort to try to copy what somebody else said sounded like. I mean, I had my amp, I had my guitar, and I just plugged it in. I didn't. I felt that a lot of the effects a lot of times takes away from the if a lot of times it's covering up the lack of ability to play rather than you're just using it as an added nuance. I mean, I get it. I love effects, but I always strayed away from using it because it just creates more chaos live. I mean, batteries dying in the middle of a show while you have 14 pedals plugged in. One chord comes out and you're constantly, well, which one is it? I felt like it could really clutter the live thing, and it can clutter the sounds as well. You're also cutting your signal from your guitar into the amp. It takes away from the sheer power that comes with just the rawness of plugging directly into an amp. And I mean, a lot of my style was the dynamics that I used were all me. Like if I wanted to play loud and hard, I'd play hard. If I wanted to play light, I would play light. And the orange amp I used was very responsive in that way, which I loved because once I had that amp, it really it helped me hone that sound a little bit because I didn't have to rely on anything. I wanted heavy distortion. It would break up that gain when I hit it really hard. If I wanted to, back off and play clean, didn't have to be perfectly clean, but it was still had a natural clean tone that you can't replicate with effects pedals. So I always went that way.
You heard it here first. When Lou wants to play hard, he plays hard.
Right. Yeah, you beat the crap out of it, and it sounds heavy and it looks heavy, it feels heavy. It's emotive, whereas anybody could stomp a pedal and jump their volume, like 10 decibels, and it sounds heavy. But like when the heaviness comes from what you're doing.
I remember you just played with a volume pedal, and that was it. And,
yeah, I mean sometimes, and there was times when I didn't even use that. I think by the end, all I had was a tuner because as Nicole was saying, we got to pretend to be a little professional. So that was one of our big pet peeves was like we're always tuning in between songs. So it's like, all right, at least you don't have to make the audience listen to it.
I want to talk about the professionalism thing in a second, but like as a band, stylistically, I think that a bunch of interesting stuff is coming up, and it's interesting. We were a marriage of like heavy and mellow, and I think something that I get really defensive about a lot is like the later wave of what would later be known to become a screamo movement of bands, especially from Long Island. I remember the way we sounded was because of our diverse taste. It wasn't. You guys got me into Failure. I had never heard Failure in my life, and I think Tommy said that was because you guys saw them. That you saw them open up for Tool, and actually, and Jason was into a lot of metal, and he was really into Opeth. I remember, and you were into Godflesh, Street Cleaner. I'd never heard Godflesh before, but then you were into Red House Painters and early Sunny Day Real Estate, and we all liked Fugazi. Right. So I guess it's funny to sit here and almost do a self-interview because I was in the band, but I always thought that was something really important to point out to anybody that may have wondered why we sounded the way we did, because I don't think we were very welcoming of that. We didn't want to be in that club. When that started happening, we weren't like owning it. We weren't like, oh yeah, we're part of this club and this movement. We just weren't. That wasn't us.
Yeah, we didn't have a label on ourselves that said label us. Because I mean, and that's the thing is, I mean, when you think about the diametrically opposed sound of Red House Painters and Godflesh, I mean, like right there, it's like, and having that kind of range of influence is great because you're not afraid to go either way. Like, I mean, and again. A lot. It's funny because for a long time, it was always a little bit strange for us as a band because we'd be playing shows where we were the lightest band on the ticket by far. Like we sounded like easy listening compared to some of the bands we played with, and then all of a sudden we were like the heavier band. At a certain point, we were playing with crazy hardcore metal bands, and then all of a sudden, we're playing with American football, and we're like, Yeah, it was a little heavy for
I'll,
American football fans, you know.
I'll just jump in and address something that Corey said, which is that we were too ugly, and that's funny, but it's true because we, like I said, like we didn't wear makeup or girls' jeans or funny outfits. You know, that style of music turned into hair metal. It really did. And we played. I don't want to talk shit, and that's not what I'm gonna do. But like we played with Fall Out Boy. We were compared to Thursday so much. I can't even tell you how many times I read a review that said we sounded like Thursday, and I love Thursday. And I think those guys liked us as well. But the band started in '97, and Making of a Conversation came out in '98, and so it was always very frustrating, I think, for us, even later on, that we were. I remember when we signed to Revelation wanted to put a sticker on the front of our record that said "For fans of Movie Life and Glassjaw." And I was the only one in the band. I think they wanted to say "For fans of Take Next Sunday, Brand New, Movie Life and Glassjaw," which made complete sense. And I actually was friends with all those guys, and I booked all their shows. But I knew we didn't sound like them, and I knew you guys were uncomfortable trying to play that game. But let me ask you this. Did you want to be a professional band at the time, or how did you feel about that when people started?
Hold on a second. I'm at work here. Hold on. Louder. Yeah, so, I mean, again, how did I feel about that? I think, I mean, again, it's the kind of thing, too, where, you know, just what you were saying about, like, you wanting to say that our band was, you know, for fans of this band or whatever. It's more like those bands were fans of us than like their fans would like listening to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, while those bands were bigger than us, some of them a lot of them listened to us. But that doesn't mean that their fans would like us. You know, I mean, I don't think that, you know, but then again, maybe they would. You know, I mean, what do I know? I mean, and I think that's what was so good about it, was that, you know, like, you could be a fan of just music, and you would either like it or you wouldn't. You know, I mean, I'm not going to say we were the greatest band in the world, but people enjoyed it, and that's awesome. You know, and I wouldn't say that there was a typical type of person that liked it. I mean, some of our friends' parents loved it. You know. Some of our own parents hated it. You know,
let me ask you two questions so that we don't get off track in regards to where you are and where you want to be, which is obviously like kind of what brought us all together this weekend. And then we'll jump to Sirens and some later stuff and all that. But what were your favorite songs from where you are and where you want to be? Sort of a loaded question, and then like, what are your fondest memories of making that record together, and just that whole era of the band touring, writing the songs? If you can kind of sum it up in your best memory.
Well, I mean, take that one by one, I guess. Favorite songs on that record. I mean, I would probably say the first couple of songs are just great. I mean, you got Water vs. the Anchor, and The Hat Stays On. Even If I Knew Numbers, I always loved that song. You know, it's very different than all the other ones. You know, I mean, I love Caboose. Hold on.
Sure.
Of course, nobody was on the radio when I was just listening, but now that I'm on,
By the way, if you have to jump off and come back,
no, that's fine. I'm good right now. I mean, unless I get an actual call where I have to do something, which is unlikely. Yeah, so I mean, again, 4 Meg was like the fan favorite, I suppose, but I mean, I think as a whole on the record, I don't know if it had the charm as some of the other songs did when you're just listening to it on the record. I think that was the best song to play live, one of, just because that was like where the crowd really responded, and like, you know, we had, you know, circles of complete strangers hugging each other, you know, and I mean, maybe they were best friends, maybe they were never met each other before, you know, and that's the sorry, my battery's dying.
All right. Before you get off,
I mean, that's right. That's a rare thing to see, you know, in this world, anytime, you know, especially now with the social distancing, which is complete nonsense. But
hey, before you get off the topic of the songs and the record, because I know I asked a lot of questions, I wanted to comment on one thing about making that record
Right.
in the studio, which we actually recorded in Philadelphia at Creep Records, which was it's still a label actually. That's just to give a backstory. Like Kill Your Idols recorded there, and our friends in Explosivo, and a lot of bands at that time, and they put out some really cool records by like Plow United and I think De La Hoya. So that was the label we were on after Rock Lock. But I as much as I wanted to be professional, one thing I remember is that that's so hard to replicate. I don't think I could ever go through that again. Is that we like did a lot of stuff like First Take. I remember recording If I Knew Numbers, and my bass drum pedal fell off, and I did, and it was like it was still there, but it like kind of fell off, and I didn't do it over again. That's kind of like where I'm going with this, is like the we just like, it's pretty fucking punk. Like we're just like, okay, that was cool, let's see how that goes, you know. I don't know, it's just fun
and
to think
I think that part of what made us so different was that we had that punk like ethic, but we weren't a punk band, you know. So like we sounded like a band that should have been a little bit more professional, but we had that punk attitude when we came out of a punk scene, you know, where, you know, maybe some of the other bands that sounded more like us came out of like the emo scene. And, you know, I mean, the scene, we were playing with punk bands, hardcore bands, ska bands. Like, I mean, it was a totally, we were the oddball in the scene. You know? Right.
We played with, in the context of just overall general music during that time period of where you are, we played with we played with Kill Your Idols, Indecision, Hope Conspiracy, but we would play with Latterman and Insurgent and Contra, and we would play with, you know, kind of like the bigger emo bands at the time. You know what I mean? It was Taking Back Sunday opened up for us, and Coheed and Cambria opened up for us, and there's probably so many more that I'm forgetting. But what do you remember about, like, if you could just like kind of in a nutshell tell people what we went through on those tours? You know, like we toured the country with a map and no cell phone, and and some of the shows we played were for nobody. Some of them were canceled. That picture on the front of the album cover is when we first got to California in Santa Barbara, and that picture of Jason and Steve, who was in Contra, the band we were on tour with, is literally it's not posed, it's not for an album cover, it's just us hanging out, and we slept on the beach. We slept on stages, we slept in strangers' houses.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we woke up that morning, there was a guy with like a tire iron standing out in front of the car. We were like, "What the fuck's going on?" You know, it was like just some guy but he was just fixing a flat, but it just freaked us out, you know. But yeah, I mean, those tours were, I mean, while they were great times, they were rough. They were, I mean, yeah, we toured with. I remember navigating with the freaking map. You know, I would drive overnight. Like we'd do a 20-hour drive and then just get out and just load our equipment and play, and then hop back in the van and drive another 20, you know, to somewhere else. I mean, it was brutal, you know, and then we had to stop at the library so Craig could check the tour itinerary, because we didn't have anything mapped out. You know, it was like, you know, and we didn't have, it wasn't like the internet was in your pocket like it is today, you know.
Man, guys, we had to drive across the country, and I would use a magazine. I would go to Barnes and Nobles, and I would get a magazine called The Musician's Guide to Touring and Promotion, and I would stay there for 2 hours and write down contacts of people in the magazine, reach out to them on landline or an email, like an AOL email address, and then hope to God that there were people at the show, and that there was no social media. And when we went on the road with a map, like Lou was saying, we had to go to libraries all the time to print out itineraries and more maps. If someone's
or even the destination address, yeah, even the address to the show. Like we're like, oh yeah, hold on, the guy emailed me, I gotta go check it. Like, okay, like we don't know this yet.
This is 20 years ago.
Right.
And, I just, and I, what's funny too, like we got into a lot of car accidents and we were just like really risking your life, and people still do that today. When you go on the road, people forget about that, but we really risked our lives and almost lost them so many times, which we'll get into. But one notable memory I want to talk about that first tour was that we played a show in Compton 20 years ago, or we were supposed to, and we showed up to Compton. Like, how crazy were we? We didn't even think that was a crazy thing. So guys, we showed up to Compton and go to this venue, and it's 2001, or no, it's like 2000, the year 2000, and show's canceled, and there's all these dudes talking to us, and I'm like, we should get the fuck out of here. And meanwhile, Jason and the other band we were touring with thought it was funny that we were in Compton, so they went down the street and bought Compton and LBC hats. Now, none of us looked like we were from Compton, and that was pretty scary. And I remember just being terrified. So we did some crazy shit. Yeah, we had some.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that was the scariest experience of the tours, but I mean,
for sure.
I mean, we were just in Compton. It sounds scary, but I mean, it was. I mean, it was definitely a dive, and it was a bad neighborhood. One of many, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of trials and tribulations on those tours, though. I mean, vehicular problems. I mean, obviously our engine blew up and seized. The block cracked. It was like, went on fire pretty much. They had the fire department had to hose it down. I mean, it was a 79 minibus. The thing was old. It was 20 years old when we used it. So I mean, that thing. I remember starting that thing with a pocket knife, or a screwdriver. Just because you had to bypass the ignition. It was a nightmare. Like.
Well, somebody mentioned Sky Came Falling earlier, and that was a van.
That was their van. Yeah.
We bought a van from Sky Came Falling, and it was this black van that would overheat, and then it caught on fire, and we lost all this fucking money on the road, and it was a nightmare.
The tranny blew in Idaho.
Yeah, man, that was some.
We got stuck there for a week. Yeah,
that's right. We did flip a van. Why don't you tell that story about how we flipped a van?
Right. Yeah, that was on the Sirens tour. I mean, the U.S. tour we did. We were literally in the dead center of the country, like the middle of Nebraska. If you look on a map, it was like Kearney, Nebraska. It's like pretty much equidistant from New York and California. Right in the dead center. It was black ice. We started sliding. Van slid passenger side first on the highway. We slid off the road, and as soon as the wheels hit the dirt, flipped us and spun us, on the side of the road. The van landed back on its wheels, with the headlights facing, the road. And then of course, then the cops show up. It was freezing cold, super windy ice storm. And, the cops, of course, proceeded to harass us instead of help us, typical order following douchebags. But, what can you do? I mean, I remember driving that whole way. We were going through like Wyoming, not Wyoming. Was it Wyoming? I think it was. We're on our way back. And the snow was just blowing over the highway on an angle. And you were driving straight, but like the optical illusion was that you were like going sideways. It was crazy. But yeah, I mean, then we got, of course, that was a Friday night in Nebraska, which means that the next day was Saturday or Saturday night, and the next day was Sunday. So you couldn't even do anything about it because everything was closed. So, we had to wait another day, to even like have the van looked at,
It was
and now it was totaled. Yeah, then we had to U-Haul it home and make fake bus tickets, and it was just brutal.
I mean, just to kind of like sum that up.
Well, that was the other tour. I get them confused, man.
No. So I mean, we got into a lot of car accidents, and to kind of sum that up too, like, the fucking front windshield caved in, and the emergency brake was like in the back seat, and the car tumbled like a like a fucking washer dryer. It was pretty nuts.
Right. Well, yeah, and the best thing about it, I mean, from the luckiest thing about it was that before we left, like Jay was throwing around the idea of putting a loft in the back, and if anybody was in a loft in there, they would have been crushed and killed. Yeah. I mean, luckily nobody was hurt. With the equipment was so packed in there that it barely moved. I think Tommy's amp had one broken tube, and that was like almost all the damage, and nobody was injured. Which was like amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
well, I don't want to spend too much time on that because we have so much to cover. But
right.
it just always didn't it always feel. You and I would talk about this a lot, and Tommy was always like kind of like an optimist. I was an optimist. You were the realist.
Right.
Jason was kind of like it always felt like we could never win, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Every time we got close, right when that happened, I would say like we were starting to get pretty popular, and there was record labels hitting us up and wanting to sign us, and that was when people start getting famous around us, right?
Right.
We started to see bands that opened up for us were on MTV, and they were on mainstream radio. I can't speak for you guys, but for me, I was jealous, and I was happy that my friends' bands made it possible, or that through them it was proven to be possible, and
right.
I was very much trying to steer us in that direction, which I think was very obvious.
Right.
But
which is very fitting considering the title of the record we just re-released. It's like where you are, where you want to be. But it really what it comes down to is like, what are you willing to do to get where you think you want to be? Do you have to become someone that you do not want to be in order to do it? I mean, and that's a question that people need to really think about, because that's why, I mean, you look at the music industry today and like these people are total sellouts. I mean, the things that they're doing to make money and because they're in contract is just absurd.
Well, I'll get there because I want to talk about when we almost signed to a major label and what that conversation was like, because I wrote about that on our Facebook and some people had no idea, which I'll want to dive more into in our documentary that's coming out. But the world was changing around us, and we were, I think, toying around with how we could be part of that more, and we were being courted by Victory Records wanted to sign us, Revelation Records wanted to sign us, Drive Through Records wanted to sign us, which was part of MCA, and then there were like a handful of other labels that were hitting us up. Those were probably like the most aggressive at the time. And right when that accident happened, we were supposed to go on the road with Vendetta Red, who were a big deal at the time. They were on Sony, and Armor for Sleep, who were also pretty big, and they were on Equal Vision. And our first show would have been at CBGB's, and we never made it, and we canceled. And that was pretty much like our story. It just happened over and over and over again. We could never.
Yeah, it's like we're always choking right at the most important moment,
Right.
It was like, I mean, we were supposed to be in like Newsday and have a show with Cursive, and Jay was like stuck in Florida supposedly, with one of his ex-girlfriends. It was just like, come on, man, like totally messed that all up. And then we wound up being like just a blurb in the back of like in the middle of Newsday, which is like, you know what, it's fine, but it's such a sign of how things went. There was always something, so like you mentioned before with that with the record label, with the record store, it was like, here you are, these guys are promoting you, and you do something that basically makes them shut the door. I mean, that's fine. That's punk rock. I'm saying, whatever. I don't regret really any of it. Again, like it's the kind of thing where we had opportunities. Some of them we blew, and I'm just glad we got to do the things we did do. And the fact that anybody cares is amazing.
I mean, frankly, I as much as I wanted it, I look back at what we sounded like, and a record like Sirens would have never survived in mainstream. I don't think there's a song on that record that could have been on the radio. You know what I mean? So I like you said, I mean, I was bitter about it for a while, and it felt like a very defeated situation. And it was very hard when we reunited. It was bittersweet when we reunited, more so in 2012, because we played, it couldn't have ended better, I guess, in the sense of like where our last shows were. We played at Irving Plaza, which was a dream come true. And we played 2 sold out shows at St. Vitus. And Jay was on fucking fire. He performed the best that he ever did. And those shows are on YouTube, and I watch them still, and I'm like really happy that that's documented. You know what I mean? Right. But we almost signed to a major label. We were courted by Drive Through Records, and I remember Christian McKnight wanted to manage us, and he said that they were in town for 24 hours, and I was so hard on to like want to take it to the next level. Victory Records got a hold of us, and they called Borders Books and Music. There was no social media. Jason worked at Borders Books and Music, and someone on the intercom told him he had a phone call, and it was an A&R from Victory, and no like emo or whatever band had signed to that label. And I remember thinking it wouldn't make sense for us because I saw that label as a band that like Earth Crisis and Snapcase were on. So like, where would we fit, you know? So we said no. And of course, that's where a lot of the emo bands ended up. And then Drive Through, what do you remember about that phone call that we had with Drive Through? Well, we played the showcase and they loved us. And we invited our friends to show up at 10 in the morning on a weekday in Manhattan.
You booked that showcase in like a practice space, right?
Yeah, we killed it, and we fucking just like tore the roof off in Midtown Manhattan at a place called Smash Studios at 10 a.m. on like a Tuesday. And then they called me at my parents' house like 4 hours later, and they wanted to sign us, and we had a phone call. What do you remember about that phone call?
Well, I feel like weren't we at Tommy's house when we basically all of us were there talking to him. I just remember, they offered us a contract, and they were just going through some of the, the spiel, what I'm saying, that, you'll get this and that, blah, 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 and we'll send you out on tour and we'll do this, but then again, as far as all that went, we weren't sure at that point. Yeah, it sounded good, but Drive Through we didn't really fit on either for different reasons. They had a lot more of that bubblegum pop emo stuff going on. But again, Revelation was the first band that was the first label that was interested in us, and all the other ones kind of jumped on the bandwagon once they found that Rev wanted to sign us. So I know that I definitely, at least me and Tom, I felt a lot like Rev wanted to give us a shot, and they were the first, and everybody else kind of was like, oh, Rev wants them, maybe we should get on this, let's steal them away. We have more money and more this, let's put out their record, regardless, I'm glad we went with Rev because they had a little bit more street cred, maybe not than Victory, but Drive Through was a little bit more, kind of that going that more mainstream.
Do you remember they wanted us to consider re-recording Where You Are, You Want to Be?
Yeah, which we totally weren't down with.
We weren't down with it at all, but we still entertained working with them, I remember, because we drove to California on tour expecting to sign. I'm going to paraphrase a lot of stuff, but when I say that we couldn't win, we really couldn't win, guys. It was, and I'm not trying to ask for pity. I think, like Lou said, I'm very happy where it ended up. And look, I'm so happy that the band is relevant today, and that we can still sell. We sold 500 records the other day. That's in 7 hours. That's fucking mind blowing to me. You know what I mean? And those shows that we played. But I guess my point is, we just couldn't win. We tried so hard to be professional, and when we were told by Drive Through, and to answer Hugo's question, they were a subsidiary of MCA Records, so they were a major label. They offered us an opportunity to record with Mark Trombino, who made the Jimmy Eat World records. They offered us a bus tour. They said that we would be on Warped Tour. They told Jay that they would clear his credit card debt and pay his rent for a while. And they treated us like we were on the label already, because they had put us on their site when we were on tour with, I think we were on tour with Latterman and Microwave Orphans for a part of the tour. And then the rest of it was with The Insurgent. And we got to California. We were supposed to sign. There was some shit talking that went down between me and another band. and I'm not going to say who it was because I'm friends with them now, but because of that beef that we had with the band, that was kind of my fault. We lost the opportunity to be on the label, which worked out for the best. But we ended up on Revelation, and talk about not being able to win. All of the people we were friends with in the punk bands talked so much shit about us, and they made a movie about how we sold out, and we couldn't even fucking do that without people talking shit about us.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a disaster.
I mean, well, it's just kind of funny in and of itself. I mean, when you say it that way, it's funny because we signed to a label. I mean, not even a big label, and they're calling us sellouts. But then you put out your own movie, to call us a sellout, and you sell a movie, about the story. Like, I don't know. It just seems a little bit like hypocritical in a way. It's like, all right, well, let's capitalize off them selling out. You know,
I think the most hurtful part of all of that, now looking back to me, is that we let all those bands open up for us, and they went on to do things that we never did, that they said were not okay. I'm still doing what I do, and and I'm happy that I'm getting opportunities today. But the other part that I find bothersome more so than that is that I can't speak for you or Tom. It seems like you guys came from good families, but Jason did not come from a good family, and I don't want to get into that too much, but talk about someone that struggled. Jason didn't have money. He was poor. And a lot of the people that talked shit about us had money, and they came from good families, and we were just trying to make a living doing what we wanted to do. And everyone was always against us. And even when the bands that opened up for us got big, the only band that ever fucking gave a shit and wanted to pay any kind of respect back to us was From Autumn to Ashes. So, like them or not, I have a lot of respect for those guys, and they had a lot of respect for us, and I appreciate that.
Right.
But
well, yeah, I mean, I think
time.
also, I mean, people don't even understand what the hell they mean when they say selling out, because, I mean, to make any money in the music industry is not selling out. I mean, selling out is when you do things as a band and as a person that go against your morals, or or you just do it for the money to fulfill someone else's agenda for you. If you're just shilling for some other company or some label, that's when you sell out. When you start, doing commercials for big insurance companies, and selling Cadillacs and GMO foods, and baby diapers and stuff to children that are poison. That's when, because you sign a contract saying that we own you. You do what we say. We'll put out your record. We'll give you the money, but we own your likeness to use as we see fit. When you start doing things that you don't agree with on a personal level in order to be successful, that's when you sold out. Not when you accept a little bit of help from a label in order to promote your music, because nobody wants to be the guy who's promoting himself, because that seems fake and kind of embarrassing to just, oh yeah, well, come check out my band, I don't want to be like that. I mean, if somebody else wants to advocate for me, awesome. That's really all it's about. It's having somebody in your corner. And we really didn't get any money or any big opportunities from that, really. I mean, they set us up on one tour, and it wasn't even a big tour. They paid to us, a small amount of money to record the record so that they could sell it. I mean, it's not like we walked out of there with stars in our eyes. But
well, let me
I mean,
ask
as long as it doesn't change you, there's no
what do you
problem.
remember of the whole? By the time we had signed to Revelation, I think, at our height, probably could pack out like a 150 cap room. I think we were, depending on where we were.
Right.
Certainly when we got to Europe, which was our last tour, it was the only taste. I think, like, if I was to look at the bands around us who got absolutely enormous, and like, I booked Under Oath for the first time in Long Island. I booked My Chemical Romance for the first time in Long Island. I booked the first Movie Life show, the first Taking Back Sunday show, and then like it was like kind of like the only time we ever got a taste of what it felt like to join that club that they were all in was when we got to Europe. And we were like, holy shit, we're headlining in Italy and people know who we are. And we were playing festivals with like 5,000 people. What are your memories, good or bad, of when we finally ended up on Revelation and toured on Sirens and that whole era?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I would say that the highlight of those tours was the European one, which, surprised the hell out of us when we were playing shows and people were actually there, I remember night after night, we'd be playing and things work a little differently there. They'll say, oh, the show starts at 9, or 10. And you'd be like, dude, 10, like, who the hell's going to show up? But, dude, and then they'll be like, oh, don't worry, like, people show up late here, like, the show starts at 10. By 11 o'clock, you're like, dude, is anyone going to come? And sorry about that. I got to hold this because it's charging. And then lo and behold, 11 o'clock would come around, and it would be packed. And it'd be like, holy crap, I didn't even think anybody knew us here, let alone, like, it looked like nobody was showing up. And all of a sudden, it was like, bam. It was very nice to see. And, especially, I think a lot of people came out just because it was an American band. I'm assuming. I know some people.
No, I think you're right, because what year was that? When did Sirens come out?
I think it was 04, I think.
All right, so 2003, 2004, the whole movement of like those bands coming from Long Island and New Jersey, and like that wave of emo or whatever was a big deal. So when you were in like Germany or London or Italy, and they were like, oh, there's a fucking band from that scene coming here, that was a big deal.
Right.
Yeah. It was like, that was so crazy. Like, we never went to Europe. I never went to Europe as a human being. And
well, I went to Ireland, but not mainland Europe.
Yeah, and our friends were so excited for us, the ones that were actually supporting us at the time. The ones that were happy for us, they came to the airport with us. Like, it's so funny to think about how normal that is now, and how like everybody was so freaked out, and they were like, bye, let us know.
Yeah, at that stage in the game, in that year, it wasn't really an opportunity everyone had, Yeah. And we were very grateful for it. I remember when we did that tour, it was it was the kind of thing where that was the first tour that we did where we actually toured like a band with any sort of help or guarantee. We didn't have like a guarantee necessarily of pay, but we had a driver and we had a van, and the equipment was there. We just brought our guitars. We got fed. They gave us beer. We got paid at every show, instead of just like, oh, maybe we'll get paid, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll get gas money. Maybe they'll throw us a bone.
We had a booking agent. We had a rider. We had a driver. We had a really nice Sprinter van, and we had backline. We told them what equipment we played, and we showed up, and it was there. And I remember, not only did we get paid and fed, and we got to drink for free, but like, they even like gave us like free,
hot meals and
weed sometimes, free weed, like rolled joints. Like, we actually felt like rock stars at the time, like whatever that meant at the time. That was
it felt like everything the American tours were, except like there was no worry about all of those things happening. When you toured the U.S., it was like, oh, are we going to be on the street tonight? Is like the promoter going to put us up? Is or whatever it might be. Like, you always had a place to stay. Even in the venues had a place to crash if you had nowhere else. They're like, oh, just go upstairs and crash here.
I just want to like tell everybody, like, I might be the biggest advocate in the band when it comes to like punk rock and hardcore. It still is dear to me, but like, the music we played, while it may not have seemed deep rooted in that, if you had imagined the bands we played with and squatted with and hung out with on that tour, which was I think 33 days, we played with Sick of It All, we played with Madball, we played with the Bronx, we played with Midtown, we played with 10-foot pole. We squatted, coincidentally, in a hostel with Poison Idea. That was fucking bizarre. And I remember Mitz from Madball watching our set. We played with E-Town Concrete and Stretch Armstrong. So strange. And he said, the only reference he had for us was, you guys sound like Fugazi, I remember. And
I'll take it. Yeah.
it's just so funny. Lou, I know you have to go back to work at some point, and I feel bad that I kind of got rid of Tommy, and I want him to get back in here. But before we go, just a couple quick things to wrap up everything that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
What are you most proud of when you think back to On the Mud Princes?
I think I'm probably most proud of the friends that we made, along the way. I think that we were a part of a scene that, there was a mutual respect between, the people who came to see us and us. I think it was the sort of rare occurrence where, I think the band actually, we didn't have an idea that we were some great thing. We were just psyched that people were there with us doing, and enjoying the music with us, and that energy between us and the crowd was, probably something I'll never forget, and while I've been in many, many bands, I think that was for some reason, just that band, there was an energy between, the audience and the band that just I've never experienced since.
I agree with you because I feel like something I took from you guys that is a lifelong quality that I really appreciated was the genuity that you had with people. I remember playing shows where Tommy would drive people home that came to see us and became, would be a fan, and he would give them a ride home.
Right.
I remember you guys. I remember joining the band.
Yeah, but eat at the diner to people.
What's that?
Yeah, so we would eat at the diner with people that were at the show, afterwards.
Absolutely, we would hang out with people, and we befriended people that were surprised that we would even want to spend time with them outside of the venue.
Right.
Yeah, man, it's when I first joined the band, Jason made a mixtape for me, and he really liked sending letters to people, and always would end it with XOXO.
Right.
You guys were big on hugs, which I thought was strange because I was used to getting beat up by dudes.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's a great answer.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was the kind of thing too where it wasn't just us doing PR. It was dude, let's hang out. I feel like that's the kind of tactic people use nowadays to virtue signal that there's some, great whatever. Oh, look at all this money I donate. Look at all this stuff I do. It's well, it's just dude, we're just hanging out because we're oh, you want to hang out? That's cool. Let's go get something to eat.
So some people were asking, are you still playing or writing in any capacity?
Not so much at this point. Obviously I did several things since On the Mighty Princes, but since I moved up to the Catskills, I really haven't, been playing with anybody. I just, noodle around on the acoustic, for myself or my daughter.
Yeah.
It's really it. And even she's like, Dad, I put it down. I'm like, all right. I'm good.
That's even more special than
right.
starting a band and leaving your family and doing the sacrifices that a lot of people make to actually be there with your daughter. I hope I get to meet her at some point.
Yeah, you will. You definitely
will. I will. I definitely will. And when we get this documentary wrapped up, you got to bring her. I know she's young. I don't know if she'll be able to watch and understand what we're talking about, but
I believe she understands more than I do. She's almost 3, and she's almost 3. She's dropping F-bombs. It's crazy, man.
No, I was gonna say I'm still trying to understand what we were doing during that time, and it's a flood of memories that are still very it's opened a door that I haven't opened in a while, and it's been very heavy. Yeah.
No, that's why it's doing interviews and stuff about it's so strange because I'm so far removed from it in my current life, and just it's been 20 years, since we started the band. you know, all those memories are so fuzzy. And, you know, I mean, while they were, you know, super important, you know, I'm the kind of person that tends to live in the moment sort of. And like, you know, it's hard to really remember the hundreds and hundreds of shows like we played with hundreds and hundreds of bands. You know, like we were playing like 200 shows a year, you know, at least, you know,
Yeah.
it was crazy, you know, and then I was in other bands as well, you know, at the same time. So it's just, it's just a big mush in your head after a while.
It is. There's a lot of stuff. I'll tell a funny story. I was so drunk during our European tour, and one day I said, "Man, it's too bad we didn't play in France." And there was silence, and you guys were like,
Right.
"Chris, where do you think you played last night?"
Yeah.
It's like so ridiculous.
Right, and that's the kind of thing too, where it's like, you know, you dream about touring Europe, and you're there, and you're like, "Wait, did I miss France?" You know, like, you know, it's like that's bad when you know you're it's an entirely new country and you don't remember, you know. But again, that's why a lot of rock stars become scumbags too, because, you know, it's like like everyone gets called out when the guys, the singer is like, "Yo, what's up, Sweden?" and they're in like Switzerland, you know, and it's like, what a douchebag, you know. It's like, but it's a big clusterfuck, especially when these guys are heavily drugged up. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't know where they are. Switzerland sounds like, you know, Sweden, whatever, SW, you know, whatever, you know. And I mean, that's what happens. You know?
It's hard to think about, and it almost makes me emotional just to like talk about it. But like, I felt like we were so defeated by that point that we just gave up. Like, I want to share a story. When we broke up in Europe, and it was the biggest height of anything that we had ever done, ever in our lives, not just on the Might of Princes. And you have to imagine what that feels like. I mean, we just knew the writing was on the wall. And I remember. Do you remember?
We knew we were breaking up before we went. At least the three of us.
Oh yeah, you're right. Where was our last show? I can't remember.
God.
Was it in Belgium?
I don't think so, but it was probably Germany, because that's where we flew into and out of. So
okay, so we were in Germany, and me, you, and Tommy, I felt we were like on a different page from where Jason was at the time, and we talked about breaking up, but we didn't really address it. So we played as if it was our last show ever, which it was, but like we didn't really. We didn't tell Jason, and I know it sounds horrible to bring up, but it was a sensitive topic at the time, and it was hard, and we were young, and we had a lot of tension, and we basically, like, the three of us played like it was our last show. He didn't know that it was. We went back, we told him, and then we went off our separate ways until we reunited, and all those reunions were great, but it was so bittersweet to just be like, all right, we're at the biggest that we've ever been, and we just played a million different
it's almost like, why did you do all that to get your band, you know, known in Europe, and then you're like, I'd see you, you know. But I mean, we knew going in, I mean, me, you, and Tom knew that it was pretty much over, you know. It just was getting, you know, crazy. Like, we weren't getting along. Everything was like pulling teeth. So, you know, it had to be done. It was going to happen one way or another. I mean, obviously we didn't say anything to him because we knew that the tour would have been hell if he knew that it was the end.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's just like a job.
And that's the same thing as the reason why, like, I totally was like, I can't do this for that 2013 reunion, you know, because he knew it was probably the end, and he was planning to do something. Like, I know he was. You know, which could have compromised our whole, you know, all of our images and all of our, you know, all of our friendships with everybody. You know, like I sensed that he was going to do something that was, you know, like going out in a blaze of glory, kind of like, screw this, like let's just you know, destroy everything I've built, kind of.
Well, you know I don't want to get too far into that. I mean,
me either. Yeah, but that is why. it was like we didn't want that happening while we're on tour, because like if it's over, you're just gonna get all fucked up on drugs and booze and just, every night's just gonna be a, just a horror show.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
we
look,
had to keep it. We had to keep it, for
there's two
professional reasons.
sides to, well, in a band, there's four sides to every story.
Right.
And the fact is, like, it's an impossible thing to be in a band and do the types of things that you have to do and get along and
Mm-hmm.
be on the same page. And that's why bands break up, and it is what it is. We're making this documentary because I think people still care. And I think that we went through a lot, and there's a story to be told. It is kind of a devastating story in many ways, but there were also some really good memories,
Absolutely.
obviously. And the great thing about music is that you put out records and you play shows that are on YouTube,
Right.
and people can like go back and relive those moments in these kind of ways. So,
Right.
I know that you and Jay didn't get along that well, and
Well, I mean, again, that was only towards the end. We
Yeah.
had a lot of great times. Hey, things happen. I don't blame the guy. I love him.
Yeah.
It just wasn't working anymore.
Right.
I mean, it's like being in a sexless marriage with four dudes. Like
That's true.
and I mean.
Well, guys, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to spend time with us. On the Might of Princes was a huge part of my life, and I don't think I would be doing half the things I'm doing without it. This record was very special to me, and again, it's out now. Yeah, thank you. This is a series that I do every night. And next week I'll be doing more interviews with other bands. If you want to check it out, I do it from the St. Vitus Instagram channel at St. Vitus Bar. It's called The Age of Quarantine. John Joseph from Cro-Mags is our guest on Monday. And then on Tuesday, who the fuck is my guest? On Tuesday, I'm still trying to figure it out. It might be Life of Agony, and it might be Show Me the Body. That's how last minute we plan all this stuff. But it's going to be an interesting week nonetheless. And I love all of you. And I hope you stay safe out there, and that we can hug each other and high five, shake hands, and not stand fucking 6 feet away from each other, because it's a really strange time. And shout out to my best friend Jade in Thailand. She got me in on the Might of Princes, and I see her watching. And to the rest of you who were always there for us, Greg, Jimmy, Tyler, all of you guys, like, were friends and roadied for us and carried our equipment, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you. And thank you, Emily. And thank you, Lou and Nicole and Tommy. Good night. Bye.